Hello Trail Dogs. Now, Facebook may be a site which you're all well acquainted with. Personally, I've not been on there since about 2014. I got in, not on the ground level, on the ground floor, but I got in early, had a look around and then realised how much time I was spending on there and quickly left again. However, recently we put One by Bikes onto Facebook, which was tricky, shall we say. Since then, we've tried posting little bits and pieces onto the website. Recently, I read a post from someone asking for advice on a new bike purchase. Now, what I did was I recommended the bike which we recommend for first-time buyers, the Canyon Stoic. What we're going to do in this video is we're going to tell you exactly why we at One by Bikes recommend the Canyon Stoic. My name is Gary. Welcome to One by Bikes. Hello Trail Dogs. So, you've decided to buy a new bike. Good for you. Bikes are excellent. And obviously, you're an intelligent person for realizing it. The reason you are here, probably, is because you're unsure of what bike to buy. Hopefully, you want to buy a mountain bike. Otherwise, you may not be too satisfied with our suggestions. Mountain biking is what we do here. For those of you that don't want to sit through this entire video, I will leave a timestamp for the summary at the end. For those of you who would like to know why, stick around and I'll explain. Before we start, a quick word about money. If you think that buying a bike is going to be cheap, it isn't. The best value that a new bike can offer could be described as not expensive. Even department store bikes will set you back quite a few €100. Depending on what you want out of a bike, the department store option is not one that we would necessarily recommend. Though they can be a great option for kids or those who are just looking for a cheap city cycle. Those of you looking for something more substantial, something more developed, stick around and we'll try to give you the advice that you need. Here in the stand behind me is Gabby's bike. It's a Trek Marlin 6 and we bought it for her October of 2021. Miles got one too. Here is them being surprised with their new bikes. Trust me, they had no idea that they were coming. The kids' bikes were not bought specifically as mountain bikes, more bought as bikes for growing kids. It was due to the mountain biking nature of their bikes that Sophie and myself got back into mountain biking. In the nearly 3 years since we started biking again, we have had many experiences biking and a lot more experience in bike maintenance. This is why we feel comfortable giving buying advice to the uninitiated. The first piece of advice is to get yourself down to a bike shop. There is no substitute for actually sitting on a bike to feel the fit of it, though take care. If the staff in the bike shop try to size you to the bike by testing stand over height, they may not be as knowledgeable about mountain biking as they are on city bikes. The most important factor when sizing a mountain bike is reach. The bars should not feel too far away, neither should they feel too close. None of this and none of this. If you are buying for a kid, buy big and laugh at the spectacle of a small child on a big bike. This is of course a laugh in the knowledge that they will eventually grow into the bike. Let's get back to the type of bike we would recommend. As a first bike, we would always recommend a hardtail. That is to say, a mountain bike with a rigid rear end and a suspension fork at the front. There are a couple of reasons for this. Firstly, hardtails are cheaper than their full suspension counterparts. Secondly, hardtails are more similar to the other types of bicycle that you may have ridden before. This will make them more familiar and therefore easier to get used to. I suspect that price will be a driving factor steering choice in this matter. My guess is that most people would rather have a full suspension bike, but the addition of at least €1,000 to the bill will, for many, be too much to bear. However, this video is aimed squarely at the first camp. Those of you who don't want to drop a ton of money while just testing the water, so to speak. Ideally, buying a bike which can be upgraded when circumstances and/or finances allow. Let me explain. If you buy a basic bike but quickly realise that your progression in the sport has outgrown your bike's capabilities, it would be great to be able to buy new bits for your bike to keep pace with your talents. Not all bikes will allow you to do this, so it is important to make the right choice of bike at the start. Here at One by Bikes, we suggest hardtails as they are the best sort of bike to learn bike control. A full suspension bike will allow you to make all sorts of mistakes without punishing you too much, where a hardtail will tell you quite quickly when you've run out of talent. This means that on a hardtail, your skill dictates your progression. The better your bike handling skills become, the more you'll progress. It is entirely possible to ride a hardtail on just about any terrain. Indeed, there are people skilled enough on hardtails to tackle the most demanding pro lines. The opposite is also true. A full suspension bike can fool you into believing it is you with the skills. It will continue to do this until you push the bike beyond its limit. At this point, the bike will rather gracelessly open the door to a new world. A world of terror, pain, and expense. As you are thrown from your bike into a tumbling maelstrom of blurred images and jarring impacts, as you and your bike take a more direct route down the hill. So, if a hardtail is the better beginner option, what should we be on the lookout for? First, by buying a bike from a manufacturer with a long history of producing specialist bikes is a good start. Manufacturers tend to design the frame first. They will equip that frame with parts that scale with the price tag. This means that the more you spend, the better the bits you will get. It also means that the frame on the top of the line model is exactly the same as the base model. Usually. There will be some exceptions. Always check to make sure. The frame will always be the limiting factor, and it's essential that you choose the right one from the beginning. Now, here is when it can get a bit tricky, but allow me to make it easy for you. People will tell you that there are many types of mountain biking. This is horseshit. In order to sell something, first you must create a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. See the raised reverse stem as a prime example. Really, there are only two types: cycling uphill and, yes, you've probably guessed, cycling downhill. Unfortunately, these two activities need two different bikes. At one extreme, there is the downhill bike. These are machines designed and built with one purpose only: to propel itself and its rider down the hill to the finish line as quickly as possible. Downhill bikes do this by being built strong. Weight is not so much of an issue. Downhill bikes also use geometry to their advantage. The front end of a downhill bike is raked out to give it stability over rough ground. A bit like a stretch chopper, only not as extreme. This means that they are not the most manoeuvrable on twisty uphill sections, the ones that downhill courses tend not to have. Cross-country courses are festooned with tricky uphill sections. As such, cross-country bikes tend to have front ends with a steeper head angle. Here we have 90 degrees. Here we have 45 degrees. Now think chopper, 45 degrees. Move towards 90 degrees and you will hit a downhill head angle before you hit a cross-country head tube angle. Now, here comes the first choice that we have to make as consumers. Do we buy a bike with a more downhill capable bias, or do we go for a bike with the cross-country option? For years, bike manufacturers have been telling us that the cross-country style of uphill capable bike is what we want. Steeper head angle, more manoeuvrable on tricky uphill climbs. But if we're honest with ourselves, most of us prefer the downhill stretches. It seems that some bike manufacturers are paying attention, but we will get to geometry a bit later. Our primary concern is utility, or if I buy this particular bike, will I be able to upgrade it at a later date? Behind me, as we know, is Gabby's Marlin 6. It has just about everything upgraded that we have been able to upgrade, including something that we should not have been able to upgrade, but we did anyway. Let's have a look over the parts that we have upgraded, and we can also look at why we would not recommend this bike as an ideal starter bike. The bike was bought new for about 650 euros. Now, I need to be absolutely transparent here. We never purchased these bikes with the intention of going mountain biking. It was only after that we decided to give mountain biking another go. So, with that admission out of the way, let us look at some of the upgrades we have made. One of the first things to be upgraded was the drivetrain. In original spec, the Marlin 6 came equipped with a 2x8 gear system, a square taper 2x crank mated to an 8-geared cassette, giving 16 gears, theoretically. In practical terms, not all of those gears are available. To upgrade, we bought a new Shimano Dio crank, new threaded bottom bracket to fit the new crank. We then swapped out the derailleur, shifter and cassette. Gone was the old 2x8, replaced by an 11 to 46 tooth 10-speed cassette. Then we threw in some magnesium pedals for good measure. What other improvements can we now make on this bike? Well, if we needed, we could change the brakes to some more powerful ones, though considering both Gabby and her bike weigh in at only 45 kilos, the supplied Tektro brakes are more than up to the task. We can change the bars and stem, which we have done on Miles' bike. Both of them have now got new ergon grips. We could have changed out the saddles, but the Bontrager saddles that came with the bikes seem to be more than adequate. Aside from that, the only major upgrades that we could do, we did. We swapped out the old tyres for a more trail-friendly Continental Rubin, and that was about all we could change. This now brings us on to the main part of this video, indeed the point of this video. While the Trek Marlin 6 may seem like a good budget option, it's limited by its manufacturing. Firstly, and arguably the most important omission, is the lack of a port in the seat tube with which to route a dropper post cable. The down tube has 4 ports, 2 on each side. Presumably one of them is for a dropper seat post cable. Then why is there no port on the seat tube? I was forced to void the frame's warranty by drilling my own port. Trek do this themselves on the Marlin 8 without risk to life, limb or warranty. So why not open up a port on the Trek 6? They are, after all, the same frame. Anyway, we now have a dropper and a 1x drivetrain. So what else can we upgrade? Nothing. As far as substantial upgrades go, that is your lot, as my nana used to say. On this type of frame, and indeed on many other types of frame at this price point, they lack a couple of important details. The first, and probably the most important, is the lack of a tapered head tube. Many of you are no doubt wondering what a tapered head tube is and why it is so important. The answer is simple. A tapered head tube offers for a wider selection of aftermarket forks. Nearly all of the high-end forks are tapered. This makes them burlier where it counts. If a frame does not have a tapered head tube, you will be seriously limited to the number of upgradable forks you can choose from. For this Marlin 6, I found only a handful of non-tapered air forks for sale. All of them had one feature, which leads us on to our next problem. The feature in question, and indeed the problem in question, is the type of axles that these forks accept. If you buy a budget bike, it will likely come equipped with an oil and coil fork with quick release axles. If you want to upgrade to an air sprung fork, and trust me, you do, the ability to quickly adjust the damping and rebound of your suspension fork to suit your weight and riding conditions makes mountain biking a far more comfortable proposition. However, the only non-taper air forks that I could find were not equipped with through axles. Hey Gary, what's a through axle? Well, I'm glad you asked. A through axle is a remarkable. Well, I'm glad you asked. A through axle is a removable wheel axle which is considerably more chunky and robust than your average spindly quick release variant. In a barroom brawl, the quick release axle wouldn't even consider tangling with the through axle, and rightly so. Unfortunately, by limiting your choice of axle, frame manufacturers are also limiting your choice of wheel. Got your eye on a pair of flash rims with a set of flash hubs to match? Think again. While any wheel builder worth their salt will be able to lace any set of hoops to any set of hubs, not even with the best will in the world are you going to be able to squeeze a 110mm hub into your new 100mm forks. Can't you just buy better rims for your old hubs? You could, but would you want to? Generally speaking, it is better to have a stronger axle than rim, exceptions aside. If your rim fails, it may only buckle, and chances are you will stay right side up. If your axle fails, you're going down, most likely in a very dramatic and not very amusing way. Well, not amusing to you at any rate. As the man once said, it's only fun until someone gets hurt. Then it's hilarious. Therefore, it is usually a good idea to upgrade the entire wheel. Sadly, 100mm fork with QR axles will not allow you to do this. Moving on, and this brings us to something which I find particularly not funny. Bikes that come with a tapered head tube. Great, you can upgrade your hubs and rims. Not so fast. The old Trek Roscoe used to come with a through axle fork and a quick release rear triangle, meaning you could upgrade the front but not the back. Fortunately, Trek have now been allowed down off the naughty step after they upgraded the Roscoe to through axles front and back. Hooray! Those are the things that we would recommend looking out for. Frame choice is the most important thing. Do you want a cross-country race machine or a downhill crushing sled shed? The lower the number of the angle on the head tube, the more downhilly the bike is going to be. 63 degrees being about as slack as you want to go, with an upper limit of about 68 degrees. Anything steeper is probably going to come with complementary lycra and chamois. Then, make sure the frame has a tapered top tube. For those of you just joining us, that's the bit where the fork is inserted into the frame. It should be thicker at the bottom than it is at the top. This means that you'll be able to upgrade to a better fork later on down the line. Finally, the rear triangle should be fitted with a through axle. This means that together with your through axle fork, yes, tapered forks come with through axles as well, you'll be able to upgrade your hubs and rims, or just your hubs, or just your rims, or if you're a really flash git, you can upgrade the whole damn thing in a oneer. Well, that just about wraps it up. I hope that you found this either informative or at least interesting. If you did, then great. Please drop us a like. If you think that we've missed anything, let us know in the comments. You can also post directly onto our Facebook page called, imaginatively enough, One Bite Bikes. So, now you can rant at us when the moment suits you. The fact that you could have done that down in the comments section is neither here nor there. But you can't post photos in the comments section. Ha! Take that, comments section! Whew, that felt good. So, Trail Dogs, we've reached the end. For now, in any case, all I need to do is remind you all, just in case you forgot, one buy is one more better. In it.